All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So today's session is called Leveraging Reports on Edcite with an emphasis on summer school administrator tools. So making sure that you as a summer school administrator can leverage all of that great data in your premium Edcite Schools account this summer, and how you can use that data to really drive instruction over this summer, but also in the 24-25 school year. A little bit about Edcite as a platform. So Edcite, we are a company in the business of data analytics, and with that comes assessments. So we have this strong belief that the more you know, the better you can do for kids. And this idea that feedback drives growth, whether that is feedback for students, feedback for teachers, feedback for systems leaders. More information allows us to do a better job. And so in Edcite, we want to help you capture information, measure student learning, and then look at that data to drive positive impact for kids. So we tackle that big vision mission of positively impacting students with a variety of products and services. But underpinning it all is this idea that if we provide aligned assessment tools, so really good ways to capture and measure information, and we combine that with actionable data, that's going to really empower teams to drive positive student outcomes. So in terms of products, there is a free teacher platform called Edcite. So Edcite is a platform where any teacher can sign up for free and start to find, build, customize assessments and get instant data for their students. Edcite Schools is the premium school and district version of that, which gives you the tools to really manage an assessment system at scale. So we'll be hyper-focused on that Edcite Schools platform today. The other product is our Data Hub system, which the research team working with some of the summer school programs, they leverage Data Hub to help clean up that data, centralize where the different sources of information connect, and then build out their dashboards and reports. In addition to those big products, we've got services. So whether teams need PD, whether they need help building content, they want to work with a publisher for interims. Lavinia Group has provided the summer school assessments for a lot of these summer programs. We provide integration support and then data consultation services as well. So just know that Edcite is a true partner in assessments and analytics. And at the end of the day, we're really aligned with having that positive impact on students. Okay, so now that you know kind of the range of what Edcite offers, who we are, what we do, let's start to lean in more to that assessment side. So when we're talking about Edcite and how to use the platform, we are talking about assessments that are formative or summative. So you figure there are some teams that have been participating in the summer school program that have talked to us about they're using Edcite for exit tickets and individual classroom assignments. That's amazing. So you can use Edcite as often as you want. So whether it's that daily checkpoint, maybe it's an exit ticket, maybe it's a homework assignment, just some independent practice for students to get instant feedback, all the way up to more of a district or network-wide common assessment, or in the case of summer school, a program-wide. So you figure the summer school program has hundreds and hundreds of schools participating, and everyone is taking that same assessment based on your grade level and subject. So you really have this range where Edcite can support with that very teacher-driven all the way up to a large organization implementation of an assessment. So as you can imagine, there needs to be quite a few management tools in the system to make sure that you are not only assigning the correct assessments, but that you are managing that implementation and leveraging that data. So what this looked like for the summer, when we're talking about assessments for learning, is your pre and post assessments for your rising grade levels. So for those assessments, the big pieces we wanted to make sure all participating schools, all teachers, all administrators had, we wanted to make sure they had aligned assessments and actionable data. So we'll spend the bulk of today's time talking about that actionable data, but just to really describe what we mean by aligned assessments, we are talking about the technology enhanced items, the assessment tools, and the test navigation. So participating schools this summer, you are from a range of states. So if, let's say, you are in the state of New York just started transitioning this spring to computer-based testing, so online testing for the first time. So we think it's really important that students have multiple opportunities to practice with those tech-enhanced items before they go to really high-stakes state assessments. So Edcite provides an aligned student experience with those question types they will see on the end of year state test. So those drag and drop question types, those select text items. And when we talk about assessment tools, we're talking about text to speech, my line reader, my masking tool, making sure that students know how to access those accommodations. So if I'm a student that has text to speech for any assessments I'm doing, I need to make sure I know how to access that come the end of year state test. So Edcite really prioritizes aligning that student experience, the items, the tools, the navigation. How do I review my questions? How do I submit my questions? Making sure all of that aligns to what they will see at the end of the year. So whether you are doing exit tickets, whether you're doing district or network wide common assessments, that the experience is building those technology background skills so they can show what they know on those higher stakes assessments from the state. When we talk about aligned assessments, we're also talking about aligning to the standards and skills that are being assessed. So making sure that students that are being asked to graph something are not having a simplified question that is reducing the skill to just picking pictures of graphs, but we actually get them in there and they're graphing, they are plotting points, they're building, so we don't have to reduce skills. So that's what we talk about when we talk about aligned assessments. Let's actually pop in and look at what this looks like on the student side. So with this part of the demonstration, we are going to now pivot to an admin account. This is a demo account. There are no real students in here, no real teachers or people. This is all fake data. And so in here as an administrator, you have access to all of the teachers in your account. You have access to all of the content that is being shared across your team. So, if let's say you wanted to use Edcite schools beyond just your pre and post assessments, you can always create assignment folders. So we might call this our third grade PLC. And you could authorize teachers to share content with each other in that folder, similar to Google Drive or OneDrive. Right now, for our summer school instance, we are just going to focus in on a pre and a post test. And for those of you who participated in the summer discovery program, you'll also have those pre and post surveys as part of your content in your account. And then, of course, all administrators have reports access. So I want to quickly highlight what these pre and post assessments look like, just to hammer home this idea of an aligned experience. So let's pop into a student view here. So this shows one of the rising fifth grade assessments. So I can click Start Assessment, and you'll notice here that it's got that same look and feel. It looks like this is set up to be for a New York team. So if I'm in the state of New York, you're probably familiar with this idea that I can navigate with buttons in the top right. I've got tools across the bottom of the page, and I've got my tech enhanced items that I'm going to answer. Okay, so let's say that I have pushed out the assessment. All of my students have taken the assessment. What are the tools available to me as an administrator to help manage the implementation and then leverage that data to drive instructional decisions? So besides making sure that everyone is added into the account, everyone has the content, so your rosters and content menus, let's talk about the tools in the Reports Hub. Okay, so in our Reports Hub, there are, looks like, 5 columns of reports. So there's no shortage of data that you can dive into. Each of these columns are broken up into a particular category. The one we're going to focus on first is this single assignment report category. So this is going to allow me to deep dive into one single report. I like to say if students are taking the assessment right now, so let's say some of you have just started your summer school program. Let's say you started today and you have to complete the assessment within 2 days of the first day of school. I recommend starting with a live progress. So in this single assignment column, live progress is going to tell me while students have access, who has progressed through the assessment, who has not even opened it, who has completed it. So you can really monitor where in the implementation process each school, teacher, class, student, where everybody is. So when I select a report, I have to choose what assessment I'm going to deep dive into. There are 2 types of assessments on Edcite. There is what we call a teacher assigned assessment, and there is a district distributed assessment. So for this summer, everything was distributed by the Lavinia group who ran the summer school program. And so they actually distributed to each network these assessments. So I'm going to toggle over to the district distributed button, and I'm going to see all of my assessments listed here. I'm going to focus in on my pre-test. So this is a Rising Grade 5 pre-test. I'm going to click confirm. Let this load. And so from a live progress perspective, I can view the data down here. I can choose to view this by school, by teacher, by class, and down to the student level. So the student level, and again, note these are all made up students. These are not real kids. But for each row, I can see that student. I can monitor in real time what question number they are on and whether they are getting an answer correct or incorrect. If, let's say, you were pushing this out as a really high stakes summative within your network or district, you can turn off the colors so everything turns blue if you don't want teachers to have real-time data about whether kids are getting it correct or incorrect. But by default, Edcite defaults to a formative setup where we want teachers to get more information and just see everything live. But again, you can monitor. So if, let's say, Woodcrest Elementary School was at 20% submitted and the window closed today, I could go follow up with that Woodcrest principal and say, hey, what's going on? I noticed that teacher Doris Wilson hasn't opened, none of her students have opened the assessment. Can you follow up and make sure that they get that completed by end of day? So the live progress is a great administrator tool to really make sure that your assessments are getting completed so you have data to analyze. Now, if I want to make sure that my assessments are being graded, I do have a tab as an administrator called grading, and that will give me an option to drill down into one class at a time and see who has been graded and who hasn't. If there is grading still needed, I will see a yellow highlight that says how many points still need a teacher graded score. By default, Edcite will auto score anything that can be auto scored. And so we consider, multiple choice, those graphing question types, any of those constructed responses where you can tell the system what answers you want or set conditions, it's going to automatically score those. You can give partial credit. You can build in a range of equivalents allowed. There's a lot that you can do for the auto scoring. We also are releasing some AI assisted scoring options in the fall. So there's a lot that can be auto graded. For summer school, the constructed responses are teacher graded. So anything where students are drawing their answers or building those models, or they're writing out those answers, that is going to require teacher grading. So you can always go through and monitor that grading class by class if you want to make sure that teachers have gone in and scored it. After everyone has taken the assessment and they have graded their assessments, that is when the fun begins with your summary report. So the summary report is going to give you what I consider the highest level overview of data. And so I can see over here a graphic that's going to show performance versus time spent. So I can kind of see, were there some questions that were lower performance, but kids took longer on? Those are typically the harder questions, ones I want to really prioritize in my instruction after the assessment. I can take a quick look at submission status and standard details. Right now, it looks like my demo account isn't turned on for a particular state. What you'll notice in your accounts is that you'll have your specific state standards listed here and performance by standard. Okay, so let's scroll on down here. Below the graphics, you're going to get this in table form, where you can get that data by school, teacher, class, and down to the student level. One thing I'm noticing here is that because I had gone to my grading page and focused in on one particular class, I'm just seeing data for my demo teacher, Doris Wilson. So I'm actually on the left here going to add back in both of my classes and refresh this report. So I can see that data summarized with, you can see that data changed a bit up there on my graphic. And then I can pull that data by school, by teacher, by class, and by student. And I can view that data aggregated, so I just am getting their total percentage. I can get that in points as well. I can get that question by question or summarized by standard. Again, it looks like my demo account, I can go ahead and add in my standards, and then that's going to update it. Actually, I can probably do that right now just to make this nice and clear. Let's go to US state standards. We're just going to turn on Common Core standards to make this quick. And then I'm going to refresh. And that way we can see all this great standards data. So from my admin reports hub, instead of going to the live progress and grading view, I'm going to jump right into my summary report. And again, instead of looking at a teacher assigned assessment, I'm going to look at my district distributed assessment and hone in on that pre-test. I'm going to click confirm. It'll let you know when it's ready. Okay, perfect. So now when I pop over to standard details, you can see all of the standards that are tagged on this assessment. So if I want to pull this data by school, I can see that data by question or by standard in percent or points. All of the data on Edcite can be exported, copied to clipboard, or printed. Now, one cool piece as well is that you can add in filters. So if I wanted to add in some demographic groups, if I wanted to add in some instructional groups, you can add student groups into your district students page, and those student groups will then be available in your reports. So if I want to start to look at growth from my pre to post assessment, I can drill down and say, okay, I want to specifically look at my students that are learning English. So my ELL students, pull that demographic specifically, and let's see what our growth looks like. And does our growth look different across our classes or our campuses? Who can we turn to and say, like, hey, what are you doing? What best practices can you share? Or areas where we want to focus and say, hey, we need to really step up our support of these students at this campus. So really using data to highlight any gaps that we need to address as a school system. So that's the general main navigation. Down here at the very, very bottom, you've got your minimum, maximum, standard deviation, average, district average. Right now I'm looking at this as a district administrator, but the cool thing with Edcite is that your teachers all have these same reports. It's just their level of access is just to see their students. Or if I'm a principal, I'm just seeing my school. And so when I see this district or network average at the bottom, it's showing me within my network or district, what was the average for everyone that took this versus what's the average of the students that I personally have access to. And again, that table can be exported, copied, and can be printed with the rest of the page. So let's go through these last 4 reports pretty quickly here. So we've talked about the summary report. Next up, we have the dynamic report, which is going to be a deeper dive into the aggregate performance. So overall, how did students do on this pretest? So if I look at which campus is this? Woodcrest Elementary School versus Granite Elementary School. I guess I can look at this by school here. Woodcrest versus Granite, I can see we've got a couple more. We've got one student in that highest proficiency at the beginning. So it just gives you a quick visual. If you want to edit the performance band ranges so they're not just quartiles, you have that option here. You can add bands, you can remove bands, you can set your cut scores, your labels, and your colors to align with whatever is the standard in your network. If I want to use this to target my intervention, let's say that for the summer, we are really going to target growth with our students that are below that 50% area. And I want to get a quick list of all of my students that fall into that range. I can either create a group with them on Edcite. So maybe this is my RTI group. This is my, maybe our tier 2 support. So I'm going to drive that in here. Let's create group and add students. Okay, so I could then on Edcite actually send extra practice to that newly created group of students, or on my post test, pull performance just by that group that was in this particular proficiency and make sure that we were growing. So again, this list, it's not just to create groups on Edcite. You can export it, you can copy it, and you can print it. Let's take a look at another report, which is your item analysis, which can really help you dig into those misconceptions. So at the top, it's going to give you a graphic that's very similar to the summary report in that it's showing me performance by question number. But I do like that this gives you a toggle to instead look at the performance by question type. And this is really helpful, especially in states like Texas or New York, where you have just transitioned to computer-based testing, to online state testing. And a lot of these technology-enhanced items might be new to students. You can start to see, are there any trends in performance based on the response type? I might be giving a formative assessment all about one particular skill, but I notice that when asked to use a drag and drop question, we're really struggling compared to if they're selecting a multiple choice. And so I know that as an instructional move, I'm actually going to really focus on providing students with more practice with actually dragging and dropping or using these math keypads to make sure there's no technology barrier to showing what they know. Down here, it's going to give me a chart that breaks down the actual answer selections. So you can pull up the particular question. So I can click view question to see what was it that they had to answer. Okay. And then over here, I can also see the answers, but if you want to see that question prompt as well, and you can see the percentage and actual student names of who selected each answer choice. This is super helpful if you are a teacher looking at those misconceptions and you're going to start pulling some groups of kids based on, oh, this student selected this answer choice. They're reversing numerator and denominator. I'm going to pull a small group and really focus in on where our denominator goes. So you can create a group, maybe send them some extra practice on Edcite, or just make a note that, hey, on the post test for that numerator denominator question, I'm going to pull this group of students and see, did they make that same mistake on the post test? So that's something that you can do to really start to look at, did my intervention have the result that I wanted it to have? Down here where we have some more drawing based questions, what you'll see here is that it's going to summarize students as full credit or no credit or partial credit, depending on how you are setting these up. So anything that was set up as teacher graded is going to, instead of telling you like, oh, these were the available answer choices, here's what they selected, they're going to break students down into no credit, full credit, partial credit. And again, you can click on it to see the full list of students. And this information can be printed. So I can print the report or the table. I can apply those groupings. And what was the other piece? Oh, the choice combination. I find this is really helpful, especially when moving to digital testing for the first time with students. Choice combination, I don't believe the summer school had any where students were expected to multi-select, but I do want to call out, if you are going to use any multi-select questions, you toggle to choice combination, it will give you a comma separated listing of what kids picked. And it is always the easiest instructional choice to follow up with kids that on a question that asked for the student to pick the two answers and they only selected the first one. That is a super common mistake that we see with teams implementing online assessments. I mean, we know it. You see the first right answer and you immediately move on to the next question. Just making sure we're working with students that, hey, if the directions are asking for two answers, don't just pick one. So those are, choice combination is nice for identifying who's picking what combination of answers. And then the final report in this single assignment report is going to be your performance band. So this is similar to the dynamic report, but instead of being focused on the aggregate, it's going to show you data by standard. So we'll go up to the top here. Again, just like on the dynamic report, you can edit those performance bands, change the labels, the cut scores, the colors, add labels, remove labels. You can actually set a default for your network or district if you have something that you consistently use. But we'll go ahead and keep these quartiles for now. And down here, I can see that data summarized by school, teacher, class, and down to the student level. The student level is going to color code it for me. Let's say that I stay in this teacher level for now, though. Here I'm seeing each of those 4 performance bands that I have set up top based on quartiles. It's showing me the percentage and count of students in each of those proficiencies. I always think it's a great opportunity to work with your staff on going beyond just looking at the average and really talking about what is the story of learning happening in my classroom. So if I have an equal number of students in this below basic category and advanced, and I'm showing an average of 50%, and I have instead in this class, everyone is in the basic category or performance level, and that's also a 50% average. Those are 2 different instructional decisions. One is highly differentiated, one is, addressing with the whole class. And so I think it is nice to work with your teams on understanding the distribution of learning versus what is the average. If you want to really drill down to one particular standard, you can go ahead and use the standard selector and start to drill down on that. And similar to the item analysis, you can click to get a list of students for any particular proficiency. So I might say, okay, Doris Wilson has this student here, again, fake students, no real kids here, but they're going to work with this student and really target this 4OA A3 standard. And down here, you can see what question numbers are associated with that standard, what was the average for the students you have access to versus the average of everyone in your district or network who took that assessment. Okay, so just to go back here to the main reports page, we just went through all of those single assignment reports. So we went from live progress to performance band, and what you may have noticed is that these cells, these boxes in this column align with the tabs across the top of your reports view. I want to now shift over to growth reports. So let's go ahead. We've got 3 reports here we're going to quickly walk through. So the cohort growth report, and again, it's going to ask me, do I want a teacher assigned assessment or do I want district distributed assessments? For this, we're going with district distributed from the summer program. So I'm going to click confirm. So one thing to quickly notice is that this would be incredibly heartbreaking if this is what our data looked like. So an important thing to do is if I go to change view assignment order, let's make sure that we have them in the correct order. So it looks like pre-test. Oh, okay, so that just might be the way that our demo data came back in. But, you know, based on all the data from last year's summer program, we anticipate more growth. And so what is good, and honestly, for this, I'm going to go ahead and just change the order so I feel as sad to look at. Okay, this is what we should expect from your summer program. All this great green. And so you can look at this data by domain or at the individual standard level. So this is going to aggregate this by, you've got your drop down here. You could say by school. So I might want to see by school. Looks like I need to update the school name on something. That's okay. This would be Woodcrest and this is Granite. And I can see that for each of my standards or my domains. I can see that by teacher or by class. And I can export that data, copy it. Let's say I just want to focus in on, maybe I want to remove, you know, student names. Let's say I pull this by student. You can choose not to include names. You could include roster ID. Maybe that's going to be part of your export. Yeah, so you've got full control here of what you want this to look like. And then you would just update your columns once you toggle. So this is just a bar chart to show you growth. If I want to look at this with a line chart, I can also look at performance over time. Again, for the look and feel of this demo, I've gone ahead and put the post assessment first because it better aligned with my demo narrative. But again, this is all demo fake data that we just went in and did some pretend student submissions. The hope is that all of this great learning over the summer is leading to great growth. And so here you can look by student to see what was their initial just overall score on the test from one test to the next and what was that percentage growth. And you can look at that in terms of percent or in terms of points. I find percentage to be much more helpful and nice to look at on the chart. Individual student performance, you can look at growth by student. And you can also, again, pull that by standard. What it's going to do down here is just show you by standard a visual and just what was the average overall. So this can be helpful if you are, instead of using it for a pre and post, maybe looking at a week's worth of assessments. How did we do on this standard on all of the practice we did this week? And it'll give you the average and the trend. If I pull this by student, it's going to do the same thing. It'll give me the average by student and a visual of their trend. So that is a very fast overview of the Reports Hub. I want to just talk through what you have access to this summer and then what happens at the end of the summer. So right now, all of you have these reports available to you if you are a summer school participant. So use these reports, dig into them, use Edcite for those pre and post tests, use Edcite beyond the pre and post tests. This is available to you and will continue to be available to you until the start of September. So if you have any questions about, I need technical support, you can reach out to our support@edcite.com email. Those of you that are participating in the summer program also have a summer school rep, so you can reach out directly to them or to summer@edcite.com. And if you are interested in continuing with Edcite schools or learning more about our data warehouse solution, definitely reach out to schools@edcite.com, because we can ensure that there is that you have continuity of access to the Edcite platform. So it just continues as you roll into the new school year. And you've got all of these nice aligned assessment tools and actionable data.